Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Syncing with ServiceNow. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Eric Schwartz with me. Eric, how's it going?
Good afternoon. It's going great.
It's been, has it been 2 weeks, 3 weeks since we last did one of these?
Yeah, you know what? Time has no meaning anymore. And as we get closer to the summer and the weather changes, I get it one day blends into the other. And all I know is if I'm out having fun or in the office working, which could still be fun, but get my point.
So we have weekends, right? I assume you have normal weekends. You have a job
Sure.
where you don't have to work that much on the weekends.
Yep.
And then you work Monday through Friday, typically, unless you're on vacation.
Yeah.
And so I get what you're saying, right? It just seems monotonous. I'm on site at a client's location this week for the first time in a very long time. But I bet a lot of people are just really feel like it's Groundhog Day, don't you think?
Yeah, I think we could probably do a whole podcast just on that topic by itself. Yeah, it's a shared sentiment. I've been in meetings. I'm very fortunate to have, or we are, that we're at a place where we've been able to do a lot of video conferencing, and it has drastically helped the dynamic between me and the other people that I collaborate with. But the whole concept of Zoom fatigue and all that is definitely real. I know that I myself am looking forward to getting back out there and meeting people in real life. And there have been a couple of different companies that I've been working with this year that I've never met in real life. And it took a lot longer to acclimate or build appropriate relationships with those people than it did the people I already had relationships with, like in real life. So, and like I said, I could talk about that for a long time, so I won't. But yes,
what was your normal week like before the pandemic? Did you travel every week, every other week, 2 days out of the week? What was it normal?
It varied. I would go a couple weeks without going anywhere, and sometimes I would go once a week for a couple of weeks, or it really depended upon the needs of the business. In my role, I support a number of different partners throughout the country for ServiceNow. And so I would routinely go out, visit them, support their needs from an enablement standpoint, go join them on customer facing events that they would have potentially. And then also make the rounds whenever ServiceNow had a release, which is twice a year. Plus we had our knowledge conference and some other internal meetings and stuff. So I was always like either out on the road in my home office or visiting one of the many offices that we have, mostly in between Washington, DC and Boston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what do you think? 6 months from now, you're back to all that, or 6 weeks from now, or 6 years from now?
I think we are assuming the world, or at least America, progresses on the path that it's on. There is probably a good chance that things will resemble normal, old normal, come the fall, I think. I think one of the biggest challenges is managing budget and making the right decisions of when to travel. I think that's a much bigger thought because everyone was forced into doing things remotely, and it's amazing in what we've been able to do. And balancing that human interaction and human touch element to a lot of what we do versus like the raw productivity, if you want to put it that way, out of like what we've been able to accomplish up until this point. That's something that I think requires a significant amount of experimentation and thought because, I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, the human element, right? And reading people's faces and their posture. And I'm on site, actually, the client that I'm with actually just went to lunch. But I would say this in front of me. We got out of the car yesterday, and you could just tell by looking at the guy, the way the facial expressions were. He was actually glad we were there. You could tell immediately it was going to be a good engagement, and that's some of the stuff you can't pick up on remotely like this.
Yeah, and we're actually taking a like a communication training ongoing session here internally at ServiceNow, a number of us, and one of those sessions, we actually were talking about this, and I specifically said that one of the communications challenges that I've been dealing with is that those relationships I told you about earlier, that I've never met these people in real life. The work was always the work, and we got the work done, and we collaborated great, and that was awesome. However, the one thing that really didn't exist, because when you're on, web meetings back to back, sometimes you don't really have time to just talk about life. And so you don't really get to know people, because you have a meeting, you have an agenda, you jump in, you talk about it, and then you move on. And that, I think, is the piece that's missing, right? And you don't really think about that until you spend some time to think about it. It's not something that comes to your mind immediately, right? I think it's really important. It's undervalued. And I think that's the piece that I've been missing. And it's taken a while. Like, the only time I ever got to talk about our lives and like see what's going on or whatever is when we're like waiting on someone to join the call. And then we just start talking about random stuff. And that actually has created like better relationships with the people that I work with. And but it took a lot longer to get there because of the nature of how we were interacting. And so I think there will be, if I was going to predict, a big spike in like getting back together in real life. And then you'll find a happy medium where you're able to better prioritize, both from a business perspective and like a personal travel perspective for business, where you're spending the money, when you spend the time to travel, and how you get together. But initially, like for me, I'd like to just go on a 2-week tour, going around and seeing all the people I haven't seen in over a year. So
yeah, we'd love to have you come down and visit us as well.
Absolutely.
Well, for this podcast, we have chosen a blog, and the title of the blog from May 19th of this year, 2021, is How a CIO Dashboard Helps You Run IT Like a Business. And that's, you and I were bouncing back and forth before this, what blog we were going to review, and this one popped up and just seems like a no-brainer. I mean, really, ServiceNow getting data into a single place where it can be consumed. IT running as if it's as if it is a business within a business. Those two things both just kind of go hand in hand. And this blog jumped out at you and I as someone that we should review. Do you want to kind of help me understand, or help our listeners understand what the introduction here is kind of helping us to see into as to why this was an important blog?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, like our last blog that we talked about, the concept here is something that we do internally at what we call Now on Now, which is how ServiceNow uses ServiceNow as a customer. And the benefits and capabilities that we get out of it are not special, in that our customers can also take advantage of the same things, but we just happen to be able to showcase what we do to showcase what you can get out of it. And in this case, this particular blog was published just before our Knowledge Conference, which happened last year. By the way, if you want to go on our website and check out all of the sessions, they've all been recorded. You can go back and watch them on demand.
And I'm sorry, Eric, you said last week.
Oh, I'm sorry. Last month. I meant last month. It would happen. I apologize. Yeah. So I don't know why I said that, but
No worries.
Yeah, thank you. So last month we had a Knowledge Conference last year too, but this blog post was for this year's Knowledge Conference, and so you can go back and check out all the sessions or whatnot from our website. So that's the quick overview. Specifically about this particular blog post, the primary concept here is talking about how the goal is to transform the IT organization from a cost center into an innovation center. And ServiceNow can help you do that. But there are some bigger thoughts around that, what that means, and how IT has traditionally been viewed and how we want it to be viewed going forward, or how we can help enable it to be viewed differently going forward.
We all want our business to see IT as an enabler, and in way too many cases, it's seen as a cost center and something that's a drag on the business. Technology like ServiceNow is something that gets us this, the ability to see the portfolio and have the ability to market the portfolio, and at the very least use the data that comes out of the portfolio to help drive the business to be better.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's not too different than how technology has been viewed in general, right? For a long time, technology has traditionally been something that you acquired when you needed it to do something and solve a particular problem, as opposed to utilizing it to actually drive change into the future. And so that's what this is about. And in this case, like you just said, IT has frequently been perceived as a place the company needs to get by, not a place that can actually drive where the company is going. So when the expenses are being reviewed, IT is a cost center, and it's not the money that's being spent is a necessity, and it's not necessarily what I would call valued. It might be the wrong word, but that's how I see it. And in this case, we want to help change that. And when you do that, it will have massive impact to your business. But there's some things that are really important when you go about making those changes and how you view the IT department. And, you can look at a company that has nothing to do with technology, right? Like a bakery or a furniture shop, right? Those companies need technology to be successful, and transforming how you view it, how you utilize it, will help you determine how you can take that company from just making cakes to selling cakes across the world, right? And having the right platform to do that. And I'm not saying that ServiceNow is the cake making platform, but you know what I mean.
Well, so one of the things that's jumped out at me regarding ServiceNow is you guys are not only using this to run IT, but there's also businesses that are using the platform of ServiceNow to actually run the business, which in some cases isn't IT. And seeing that happen around us is one of the things that kind of highlights what ServiceNow is doing for business in general, IT or other parts of the business.
Right, exactly. And I mean, in a lot of ways, especially with the reliance on technology or how you could potentially utilize it, IT and the business become one. It's not, this is the company, and then I have my IT department that just services this stuff, right? It becomes more intertwined. And that's why this concept that we're talking about today is so important, because in this case, we happen to be talking about what we call the CIO dashboard. And I can talk about that in a couple seconds, but basically what we want to do is we want to provide critical information to the people that matter to the business so they can make appropriate and accurate decisions. And doing that means that whatever it is, whether it's IT, HR, whatever it is, when you have valuable data and insights that you can get at an instant, it means that the leaders of those organizations can make decisions that are accurate, well-informed, and quick. And that ultimately is beneficial to the entire company.
So in this blog, what we're looking at here is the CIO dashboard that ServiceNow has created for their internal use of the product, or is this actually a product that ServiceNow has?
Yeah, so basically, ServiceNow has a out-of-the-box capability that we have for multiple roles within the organization. In this particular case, we're talking about the CIO dashboard, but we do technically have dashboards for all different roles, whether you're an individual contributor, a manager, a director, or an executive. And depending upon what your role is, will change what's important to you. And that is the information that's displayed. And in this case, it's the CIO dashboard, and it's an out-of-the-box capability that's available to all CIOs that are using ServiceNow. And essentially, it's a collection of key decision-making metrics and business-critical questions and insights to help those leaders make quick, efficient, accurate decisions. And there's
Can you
Okay.
clone, can you edit this one, or can you clone it and then edit the one you cloned from this? How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can start from scratch and build a dashboard that's completely set up for you, whoever you are, whoever your role is, whatever you want to capture, whatever you want to keep track of. Or you can customize this particular dashboard and just change out one of the widgets that we have in there. And so like in this instance, there's like 5 areas like overall from a CIO perspective that we go over, right? And here in this blog post, we talk about protecting the business operations, executing strategic programs, using applications to drive productivity, helping ensure customer and employee satisfaction, and then contributing to the company's growth. And that's what's important to our CEO, and that's what we have. But if you, or CIO, excuse me, if you were a different executive or you had a different role, you could only take maybe 3 of those things that we have that are being tracked here, and then put other data into the dashboard and change it. So whatever you set today, if you don't like it and you want to manage something else, you can change it tomorrow.
Right. Right. Okay. So it jumps out into several sections here. First one is security. Is that a separate, is that a drill down? Is that a separate dashboard? Tell me what this is about.
Yeah, so the security portion of this particular dashboard, and I do recommend that anyone who is listening to this go check out the blog, because there are actually screenshots of the dashboard that we're using. So you'll be able to check it out. And we haven't upgraded this podcast to video podcast yet, so I can't show it to anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the security part is basically a tab in the dashboard that has a collection of critical components aligned to security. So this particular part of the dashboard shows risk exposure across ServiceNow as a platform, the cloud and on-premise environments, and the security response to the security exposures that have been identified or being worked on.
And those are things that typically a CIO would have to be, going around the organization virtually, physically, whatever, and asking for updates on. Now he's getting it real time.
Yeah, well, so the whole concept of this dashboard, in whether it's security data or regular IT ticketing dashboard information, whatever it may be, the whole concept is that we're providing this information at a glance to the CIO. So whether he's sitting at his desk or using his mobile device while he's swinging golf clubs at Topgolf, not sponsored, he has the ability to view this important information. So like within the security view, right, you're looking at the average age of different security incidents, how long it takes to resolve them, how many are being worked on at one time, and potentially what the exposure is for different areas of the business based on applications, based on the security audits that have been run within the software that does that. So you're able to feed that back into this dashboard and say, wow, I have the most important system in my company have 3 known security flaws that have been published. This has all been identified, within the software, and, they need to be taken care of. So let's prioritize the people to be doing that. Or I already know that people are doing it and it's taking them on average like 24 hours to resolve these problems, right? So having that information is super important. And being one native platform across all of our applications can feed valuable insight into this dashboard. So that means that our CIO at a glance can see the impact of these key security incidents, the infrastructure, and not just those individual exposures or issues, but the impact to both internal users and external customers. And so that means that the CIO in running IT, they don't need to run a report or say, hey, let's have a regular scheduled meeting just to get this information, right? They can look at it at any time in real time and then drill into it to start to figure out what's going on. And so when they actually call that meeting, They know who they need to call. They know what they're going to be talking about. And that meeting is immediately impactful because they're going to be able to drive action out of that, as opposed to just saying, let's have a meeting to figure out what's going on, because you already know what's going on.
And they can use these visuals in the actual meeting itself, right? And they're just a refresh away from getting even more accurate real-time data. But this gives them, you're not having to put a bunch of stuff into PowerPoint. You're using the dashboard. We did that all the time internally with our sales organization, where we bring a dashboard up and talk about, what the topics are. We don't have to, create some presentation going into it.
Exactly. Right. So you're saving time there as well. And who knows, you used to have to pull a report yesterday to have a meeting today. 12 hours later, that could change. It could be out of date, and now it won't be.
And this is going to give any data that Salesforce has access to, including third parties that you're integrated with.
ServiceNow, I think. I think you said Salesforce.
Sorry.
It's okay. But we do actually plug into Salesforce, so we can capture all kinds of metrics from them to put into the dashboard. Absolutely. But it's not just them. It could be anything, right? So you could have a IBM security suite and plug that data in here. It depends on what your organization is using. And if we have a ServiceNow store where a lot of the vendors, Cisco, IBM, Nutanix, you name it, they have their own integrations and plugins that they've created and published, for sometimes for free, sometimes for a fee, in our store. So it can exist there, or partners such as yourself can build them for our customers. So, sky's the limit.
We've actually built one for a company called Liquidware, which is very, very prevalent in the in-user compute space that we historically have focused on. So we do have one in your store actually now.
Oh, excellent.
So portfolio and program management, obviously this is part of your dashboard, part of your drill down. Help us understand where this ties in and why this is important.
Yeah, so here's another tab within the dashboard about the portfolio and program management, right? So the CIO needs to understand what is going on from a delivery perspective within the organization, what projects are being worked on, the cost structure of those projects. Are we on budget? Are things being delivered on time? And then potentially, some of the analytics of those programs and projects. So, in this case, the CIO and their team, they need to make sure that the overall projects that IT is working on are are delivered on time, within budget. And that is typically, again, like the security thing, a time-consuming task, right? We have to run a report. Let's get all this data. Let's see where we're at. And now you don't have to do that. We're able to go into our product and portfolio management application, take all those metrics, plug them into this dashboard, of course, making it available to you anywhere. And then you can look at and correlate the progress of key projects with, you can correlate risk, the outcomes, and the resources that you need to look at together to get that increased awareness of what's going on, and identify the challenges and what achievements you need to make to, again, ensure that you're making quick and accurate decisions. So you have a program project to deploy a new application to a set of users, and there's a whole bunch of development time associated with it, and it's costing you a certain amount of money. You have a certain amount of resources. At a glance, you can see, okay, where are we? Do I need to talk to the program manager of that particular project and reallocate some resources? Or from a higher level view, the CIO can see in multiple departments within the IT org, this project is done, this other project is still being worked on and they're behind. Well, guess what? I know without asking anybody that I have available resources and I can redirect, and you can do that at a glance. So again, you make that meeting. That meeting's not just to find out about what happened, it's to actually create action to say, hey, let's move these people over and help the team that needs it.
I'm sitting here looking through this. How did CIOs survive without this?
Well, how a lot of things have happened without what we make available today, I like to attribute to a movie that I like a lot called The Truman Show.
Okay.
I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier on one of the other episodes, but you kind of like Jim Carrey's character in the movie The Truman Show. He was a victim of his own environment, and so he was completely complacent up until a certain point in which he fell in love, but he was completely complacent with the world around him. So people don't necessarily know the type of misery that they are in because they don't know what's possible without
Right.
doing things the way that they've done them.
Mhm.
And that's the big thing. Our biggest competitive challenge at ServiceNow, quite honestly, is the thought of just doing things differently. And that's something we encounter every day.
And it would be fair to say that with good data and a good platform, all things are possible, like what we're seeing here, where you go from ignorance, if you will, and I don't mean that derogatory, but you're ignorant to what's going on at any real point in time in your environment, all of a sudden to having it in a real-time dashboard, if you just have the platform and the data to work with.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you that no matter what your considerations are as someone who is saying, oh, I'm going to go and digitally transform my organization and to build these dashboards and get my entire team to have access to this data and all of that, that's such a heavy lift. The thing is this: first of all, it's not, and great partners such as yourself can help that journey. But the thing is that the crazy component is that after you get over that first hurdle to start that digital transformation journey, from that point forward, any further decision to change the way that your business runs or makes decisions will happen multiple orders of magnitude more quickly and more easily because you've crossed that hurdle and you now have the tools at your disposal to change things much more quickly. As I mentioned in our last episode and probably a few times before, just the needs of over the course of the last year and how so many things changed for so many businesses, having that platform to be able to do that instead of having to do all the work up until that point, it's really life altering, business altering.
So the next section here talks about applications and services. What we do in IT is really all about applications and providing services to make the business run better. It makes sense that this would fall right into a CIO's portfolio of things they're looking at. Can you kind of talk through this one a little bit?
Absolutely. So another area of this dashboard available to our CIO, IT builds apps and services that the entire organization relies on. And the IT organization needs to make sure that these applications and services that they are providing are working or being delivered as intended. And so this particular dashboard for our use is used to help identify areas of improvement within those applications and services that track usage, adoption metrics across all different types of job functions, regions, and more. And our IT leadership uses this to make sure that the products, applications, and services are not only doing what they're supposed to do, but they are providing the appropriate ROI and proactively showcasing areas of investment for the future. So if we've deployed a new portal and we're seeing that nobody's really using it, then why is that? Is it that they've started to use it, they get to a certain point inside of it, and then they stop, or that they've never even attempted it, right? And looking at those insights allows some pretty major operational efficiencies without needing to necessarily impact employee satisfaction, because you can stay ahead of what's going on. If you see that you've deployed this dashboard and it's not being used, or people are only getting so far, and you have that data now, you can change it before people even start complaining about it. And ultimately, that's going to lead to enhance productivity, better customer satisfaction, and better utilization of resources, because you're not going to need to pivot in the middle of something because you're already going to be ahead of it.
Right. I mean, that to me is awesome. You have the old days, and for most people, the old days are the current days, where you didn't have a real-time dashboard like this, and at best, somebody was going to generate a report to you and get back to you, and that's a few days. In this world, you just go out, you refresh the dashboard, and you can tell for yourself who's using what, and start to drill into if they're using it at all, if they're only getting to a certain usage of it, and then stopping. And you can start to take action and start to challenge your team to understand why this is happening versus relying on your team to give you the data.
Yep, exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, and then this next section, I'm curious to see what this is about. It says sentiment. What is the sentiment part of the dashboard about?
Well, so the view here is that the CIO dashboard is a one-stop shop for visibility. This is quoting the blog specifically. One-stop shop for visibility across the organization. And I kind of talked about that before, where it's allowing our CIO to take care of issues within IT, but that impact both internally and external users and customers. And so this dashboard empowers the leadership to make quick, accurate decisions and stay ahead of the needs of the business. And ultimately, it's providing this level of insight that drives that innovation and satisfaction, both internally and externally. And we can continue to not just capture the metrics like we just talked about utilization of the apps and services that IT is putting out there, but we can then go out and capture real sentiments from our employees, from our customers, and bring all of that in to make the CIO and the leadership team well informed. So we can capture data from the employee portal, virtual agents, our mobile app, the IT infrastructure, and then employee surveys, and capturing all of this data together allows us to build an appropriate picture to drive IT and the innovation that it has within the company.
So the sentiment is like a takeaway from what you're pulling from the dashboard to see how things are really going.
Yes, absolutely. It's what are we taking away from here that is meaningful, and how are we doing that?
Right. Okay. And at the end of the day, that's probably the most valuable thing the dashboard gives us is, it's our barometer. It's our, how are we feeling? It's our blood pressure. It's our temperature. At the very least, you as a CIO can look at this thing daily, weekly, whatever it is, and have a sense of how you're doing versus just having to try to, figure it out from talking to people or negative feedback, which a lot of times negative feedback way outweighs positive feedback, but the positive feedback's there. You just don't hear it.
Yeah. And if you go back to the first episode, we talked about human-centric design and how IT needs to take that approach. That is not any more true than in this case right here, right? Where we have these great dashboards, we have all these great insights, and yet we are still going back to the user, what they're doing with it, and what their feedback is to help drive change within the company. And if you don't view what you do in IT as a loop, where the stuff that you produce and manage and service goes out and then comes back, then you're doing it wrong.
Right. So I think these next couple of sections talk about the fact that you guys are eating your own dog food, drinking your own champagne, and you guys are seeing value internally out of providing the dashboard to the organization and helping you guys run your own business.
Yeah. And so like I said, this is not just an idea. This is a real deal use case within ServiceNow. We do this. Our CIO uses these dashboards, but they are also available to all of our customers. It's all built on ServiceNow, for ServiceNow, but for everybody. And it's powered by our performance analytics engine. It's a key component of our platform that allows us to take analytical data and turn it into nice, easy to consume graphical charts and live information. And so that key component of our platform allows us to create these dashboards, both for, workstation views within your web browser or on your mobile device. So like I said before, you're at Topgolf swinging the clubs and you can still see the same information. And it's not just data that's within ServiceNow, it's data that lives within the entire company. And having it at all under one roof in one single pane of glass really pays dividends to everybody involved.
Yeah. Eric, I've got a new phrase for you. You've heard of a picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
Sure.
How about a picture is now worth 1,000,000 data points?
Absolutely. In many ways, especially because there's all kinds of AI and ML that analyzes a picture, creates all kinds of data points, and can give you insights right there at this touch of a button. So definitely.
But I think I would challenge what you just said a little bit. I think for human beings, right? AI, our various technologies can look through the data and find what they need. But for human beings, CIOs, myself, yourself, seeing those pictures and being able to gain value out of those pictures without having to drill down at a high level like this dashboard does, but you don't need to. In many cases, you can just tell from the pictures what's going on. And that picture to the human being is just extremely valuable.
Absolutely. And, I was joking, the AI ML picture data points is a new thing that everybody's doing nowadays. If you see what's available on your smartphone, but absolutely, right. Just transforming we're in some ways doing the reverse, where we're, like you said, we're building a picture of those data points. And that has a lot of significance, because the days of the TPS reports where you need to go through all these sheets of paper to check things out, it is life altering.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I got about a comment. Well, I don't know how a CIO survives without something like this. And if you can get the data into a platform like this and be able to consume it this way, like you said, you don't know what you don't know, but once you have this, I don't know how you would ever live without it.
Right. And like one of the things that I would leave our listeners to think about is, imagine you're driving in a car and you no longer have a dashboard. None of the speed gauges, gas gauges, or anything are available, and you're driving the car.
Yeah.
And you need to find out how fast you're going, how much gas you have left, maybe what the engine temperature is. How are you going to do that?
Right.
You got to stop what you're doing and then figure it out. Right. And so otherwise it's probably just a lot of guesswork. And that is kind of how things have been without something like this.
Well, I can give you a real world example, right? I grew up racing go-karts and other types of vehicles, and all we ever had was an RPM gauge. And so you were trying to discern from that whether you were, making faster lap times, and you didn't have, stopwatch. You didn't have a mile per hour gauge or kilometer per hour gauge, and you were trying to infer from that little bit of data a big picture, and it was next to impossible.
Exactly. So just imagine what you can do. Now there's so many gauges that you can have in a car. So it's, but you can see what you want and when you need it.
Right. So many points of data that you need to be dissecting in order to get the outcome you're looking for.
Exactly. And I mean, that's another really important point, is that, nowadays we're kind of overloaded with data, and making sure that you're looking at what's important to you, which is the whole point of what this dashboard is that, the CIO gets what they need and the director of IT gets what they need, and they may not be the same. That's really important too, right? So it's data without the appropriate frame is useless.
And because of the ability to modify the dashboards, you get the data that you want. It comes in a prepackaged scenario, but if you want to opt in for the data that you're looking for and maybe take some things out, that's completely within your realm, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yep. The power is yours, to quote someone who likes to save the planet. Captain Planet reference, if you know what I'm talking about. If not,
It went right by me, but I got it.
It's old, but probably, yeah, whatever. Anyway,
But
somebody.
Eric, I appreciate you joining, and always good to chat, good conversation, and good to learn more about what ServiceNow is doing.
All right. Same here. Appreciate it very much. This has been great.
Any other parting words? Anything else going on that you'd want to make sure people are aware of?
I don't have any news at the moment, other than just to remind people to go check out the Knowledge Conference. Anything else? I guess, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, you're welcome to connect with me. Eric Schwartz at ServiceNow. There happens to be two of us, but you'll see who I am. So
I think I did reach out to the wrong one time, and they let me know.
yeah, we get confused, but he's in Canada and I'm in the United States. So that's how you can tell us apart.
I think I posted the podcast and tagged him the first time, if I remember correctly. All right, Eric. Well, thanks. I appreciate you joining, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you very much. Talk to you later.